Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, behind the scenes of this show, I am always constantly looking to gain an insight into what happens behind the scenes at some of the big companies out there. And I've been working closely with Citrix recently, and I've got some great stories to share about how they're working closely with their partners to solve some of the big talking points in the workplace right now. And one of the topics that's becoming more and more frequent is creating a culture of wellbeing, but with technology to do that. And with stakeholder capitalism and conscious capitalism entering the mainstream this year, I wanted to explore the future of work and how businesses are not just leveraging technology to help run their business, but also transform the employee experience. And after learning how Envision IT is a soulful company whose business is technology optimization, ensuring that mainstream technologies in businesses today are an enabler to employee engagement and business success versus being an obstacle, and that they're working with Citrix, I wanted to find out more. But enough scene setting from me. Let's get today's guest onto the podcast. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. My name is Danijela Nandi. I'm a Workspace product manager. And this fancy title translates into making sure that we add value to employee experience and facilitate success of our customers through building the right integrations and user-centric flows and micro apps.
And Neil, thank you for the warm welcome. My name is Nancy Pautsch, and I'm the Chief Evangelist of Stakeholder Value with Envision IT. And that my title translates to President. And along with my fellow ELT members, we head up Envision's purpose-driven technology services business. Ultimately, we're a group of curious and compassionate people working to ensure that technology enriches the lives of our stakeholders.
I absolutely love that because over the last 12 months, we've all gone from working in the office to remote working, remote recruitment, where new starters have not met any of their colleagues, to hybrid working. So to set the scene, Nancy, can you tell the listeners about the journey that every business has been on, how it has impacted employee engagement and their well-being too?
Sure. I can certainly share our experience, what we've seen in the market. And we've been working with a lot of clients and a lot of businesses. And, what we've seen and experienced, right, is everyone is navigating, the volatility and the uncertainty and the suffering that's been introduced by the pandemic. Right. But, most businesses have been, at least the ones that we've had the privilege of working with most, have really been navigating it pretty well. We've seen the business world in general really step up and first and foremost, take care of their employees, work to keep them as safe as possible. And many have gone even further than that, just the pure safety, but really the care for their employees. And on a broad sense, we've seen just a reinvigorated sense of our shared humanity, which has been quite, lovely in the business world, right? And also a heightened recognition or refreshed recognition of the value of people, right? People, not just employees, but them as people and their meaningful contributions to the business. So, those are some of the, really good things that have come out of the misery that the pandemic has shed, a light across the world. When we see that, we've really seen, as businesses, kept employees safe, right? They've enabled remote work. And what we've seen is kind of a two-way trust and credibility, a two-way street of trust and credibility evolve with employees and employers, right? Employers have really cared for their employees, right? And employees have recognized that. And so where we see this credibility and trust evolve is employees are really but maybe more so, trust their employers, that they have their back, right? They've got them. And employers are seeing with, their employees, with workers, the people, that they're really stepping up and they're caring for the business. And so with that now solid track record of that two-way street of trust and credibility among employers and employees, we have seen employee engagement skyrocket in 2020. Gallup reported record highs of employee engagement. For years, Gallup has been preaching about remote work leading to employee engagement and employee engagement impacting productivity in such a great way. And in 2020, it was kind of a forced experiment. And boy, did that prove out. That experiment proved out. We saw in productivity gains in businesses, the lowest I've seen, there have been a lot of studies and a lot of surveys, right? But the lowest I've seen is 43% from Future Forum and PwC. Tons of research firms and analysts have been doing research on that productivity. So we've seen the experiment prove out, certainly on the productivity, but then also on the pace of innovation. Oh my gosh, McKinsey put out a report, and many of the execs that they interviewed said that they experienced the pace of innovation 20 to 25 times faster than they ever thought possible. So, look at that engaged workforce. They're more, the workforce has been more productive. The pace of innovation, one of those execs was actually Satya Nadella, who said early on in the pandemic, he saw 2 years of digital transformation within 2 months, right? And that's what we observe certainly with our clients, right? We've seen this. We've seen employee engagement. We've seen productivity. We've seen innovation. And with that, I guess it's not a surprise that most business leaders are considering the shift to remote work and, evolving hybrid work to be a success. I think it was 80%. Of execs were saying it's been successful. I think that came from PwC. But it's not perfect. I always say perfection is pure fiction, right? And when we look at the rearview mirror, and some studies certainly coming out that have come out in 2021 have shown something that was a bit of a surprise. Gallup actually released a paper they called it the employee and wellbeing paradox. Traditionally, employee engagement and employee wellbeing are reciprocal. They go hand in hand and are additive. But in 2020, for the first time ever, at least first time ever Gallup has seen it, they diverged. And so that's something that is an important lesson for us to come away with in 2020 is they can diverge. And right now, well-being needs some work. So that's kind of for the broad strokes, what we've been seeing. Much of it is inspiring and great news, but there's always work to be done.
Absolutely. And of course, you both work very closely with your customers, including some of the world's biggest businesses. So from the conversations you've had, how has it impacted your customers? Is there anything you can share or any insights you can share on that?
Sure, I can. Just before that, I wanted to say, if I had a certain kind of power, I would prescribe a dose of Nancy to each and every business out there to take on a regular basis. And she's my favorite president. Now I can actually talk about the question you've asked me. What is it that we've seen out in the market and with our customers? I think that the true impact of the past year is to be felt for years to come. So right now, we can't even see what will be and what is the impact of what we've just been through. It's too early. So an obvious initial impact that everyone saw was that not all businesses were so lucky to smoothly change to work from home, almost from one day to another. Many businesses didn't have the right infrastructure or the right infrastructure to ensure secure access to all resources employees need to be productive and enabled. So this is something where we as Citrix were lucky. So for us, it was quite easy from one day to another to start working from home and to, let's say, not lose on anything. However, besides this infrastructural technical impact that the pandemic had on businesses, were you ready to take on this challenge, right? Some were not, and we're catching up. There was also a huge impact on employee well-being and thus productivity. Nancy just touched a bit on this, and I know for a fact that she has a lot to say about this topic. For example, multitasking and the days that melted into one another. People didn't know anymore, when do I start working? When do I finish working? There was a lot of fear of the future, this pressure of the unknown, anxiety, depression, stress, and all this took a big toll and had a severe impact on the workforce across the globe. This is one of the things where we don't really know today what is the size of this impact. So from the customer's perspective, all of a sudden, we saw customers needing a way to manage not only remote work, so enable somebody access and do their work from any place in the world, but also gradual return to the office, because from one geography to another, people were able to return to the office during the summer last year. Customers needed adequate ways to communicate to their employees. They needed to enable and provide support programs beyond anything that we've seen before, anything that we knew traditionally as, this is what my employer provides to me. There was simply a requirement for more, for better support. And then also the ways to manage productivity. Companies needed support and help with that in a context where we could not simply walk over to a colleague, hey, can you help me with this? Or to the IT guy, the famous IT guy, hey, my computer is not working, can you help me? It was gone from one day to another. And all of a sudden, starting with this, can we ensure business continuity? Are our people falling apart, or are they doing somehow okay? And, what do I do if my VPN is failing? Like, how can I solve this quickly and unblock myself? So this is just a small glimpse into an array of impact that our customers out there saw and needed help with.
And I suspect that everything that you just said there will resonate with so many people. And I suspect that a lot of businesses will be thinking, it's not just us. And Nancy, these must be challenges you must hear every single day. So how can technology be used as an enabler to employee engagement and not just an obstacle?
Yeah, that's a great question, Neil. And something that really businesses, especially with the world of hybrid work now upon us and not going anywhere, by the way, really need to understand and execute on, right? So, how first and foremost, I mentioned earlier that that recognition, and I'd like to say kind of a refreshed recognition, right? Because we all instinctively know the value of people and their contributions, right? Yeah. But with business, the refreshed recognition of or heightened that people are the source of everything. They're the source of business. So you know what? With technology being an enabler, start with the people, right? Start with the user experience. And have it be intuitive and consumer-like, easy for them, right? That makes it less of an obstacle, right? Hopefully not an obstacle, but, a facilitator, right? More and more these days, people rely on technology to help them do their jobs. Let's make sure it works for them, right? Danijela touched on this, support focus. Right? But context switching is such a time waster. Oh my gosh, talk about studies on that. Woof. That, help have a workspace that supports focus, right? Because not only is the content switching and all the applications and all the bells and whistles and alerts and dings, dongs, dings, is that disturbing, someone's workflow, but also then hybrid, right? When we're at home or out in public or wherever we may be doing work, there might be other distractions, even outside of the workspace, and then leverage, AI, machine learning, micro apps, right? To help reduce the busy work. And empower people to do the work that they're hired for and that they want to do. Listen, people instinctively want to, I mentioned it earlier, meaningfully contribute. People want to contribute to the business, right? Help them do that. We say, get people into their flow. Daniel Goleman from Emotional Intelligence, or one of our favorite coaches and authors, Gay Hendricks, he calls it the zone of genius, right? When people are in their zone of genius, they are doing their best work. So help them get there. Prioritize and present work. Present work to folks in a prioritized fashion. Make it easy to find, right? They don't have to go searching. And again, that prioritization. And then with, remote work staying or hybrid, certainly, we really have to look at collaboration among teams, right? Teamwork makes the dream work, right? So let's facilitate that collaboration so everyone's cooking with gas and we can keep that productivity up where it is. And then, of course, with hybrid, people working all over the world and collaborating, we need to make sure that it's always available and always secure, because those bad actors, God bless, they have not been taking time off, right? Certainly, the vulnerabilities and some of the naughty behavior is turned up. And so we need to remain vigilant, right? So I guess that's really the places to focus to make sure technology is an enabler to our new, our next version of our world of work, right? We keep saying next because someone can say new, but we're going to be saying newer, new. So really it's this next version, right? So yeah.
I love that. So many great insights in there. And I'm curious how Citrix and Envision actually came together to solve these problems and make the lives of IT admins and business leaders easier and ultimately increase productivity, because that's what it's all about. But can you tell me a little bit more about how you complement each other's strengths by working together? And Danijela, I'll throw that to you first.
I leave it to Nancy to speak about how Citrix and Workspace platform impact and support this space that she's speaking so beautifully about, the space where she and the Envision IT make their impact. But instead, I will tell you a great story of how Nancy and me met.
Oh,
so
goodness.
It was late 2020, just before Christmas. All the good movies start there. I ran a validation project for a very specific solution that we have, that we made available at Citrix for the Workspace micro apps users. That's the employee wellbeing solution. So end of 2020 and early into 2021, I was running a number of interviews with our select customers and partners because we wanted to understand what is the perceived impact of the solution, readiness to adopt it, the value these people could see out in the market, etc. Typical product management work. So one afternoon, I get on a call with one of our partners that I haven't met before, and there's Nancy and her fabulous team. So the moment we started the conversation about employee well-being and the specific solution I had on my hands, I remember I thought to myself, looking at Nancy on the screen, oh, this will be good. This will be good. And I think by now, you, Neil, of course, because we've met before, and your listeners by now, I think you know what I mean. So if we fast forward just a little bit, we found ourselves building a specific use case within this employee well-being solution. By we, I mean the Citrix and Envision IT. Which I hope to come to our micro apps catalog soon. So stay tuned, and hopefully everybody will be able to get their hands on that. So we're building together as well.
Absolutely love that. And Nancy, is there anything you'd like to add there?
Very frankly, Citrix is the leader in developing secure, people-centric platforms, right? They just simply are. And they're delivering to the needs today, right, in the world of work. But moreover, they're relevantly innovating for the future world of work. And they do that, in so many ways, significant invest, but also what's really key there is they open and maintain a dialogue with customers, with partners. They engage analysts and researchers because they're not just guessing, right? They are investing to understand what and be empathetic to and then develop to the needs of the world of work, right? To optimize that world of work. So frankly, Citrix's awesome technology helps us effectively serve our higher purpose of enriching the lives of our stakeholders. We design, we configure, we implement, we customize Citrix platforms, and then we keep them optimized for clients. Because again, I touched on it earlier. There are some bad actors out there, so we need to keep our platforms optimized And you can't set it and forget it, just like we can't with our health, which all we're probably a little more aware of too right now, right? But with Citrix being an awesome technology, we make awesome work. That's what we do. Can I just mention, you asked about IT admins and how we do this together. And IT admins and business leaders. So, IT administrators, I tell you, Danijela astutely mentioned earlier, that the well-being sacrifice, the suffering that we've seen certainly, or the toll, I guess, that well-being has taken on the world of work, right? And IT admins have shouldered much of the burden, right? They're kind of the unsung heroes and heroines. All of this hybrid work, this enabling remote work, all of this, or much of it anyway, has fallen on IT. I think it was census-wide. They have surveyed thousands of organizations, and 77% of IT teams report high stress, right? And as Danijela mentioned, stress is a big part of well-being. So one of the things that one of our collaboration areas have certainly been in the micro apps, right? So one of the micro apps that Envision has developed, and it's on the Citrix Ready Marketplace, relates specifically to change management in IT. I had mentioned the importance of, facilitating work for people and helping people really get in their zone of genius or their flow and focus on the work that they were hired to do and love to do. Listen, IT like to do IT, right? So one of our micro apps helps with that change management process, and specifically the approval process. Most technology professionals I know prefer to spend their time optimizing IT, not shepherding approval processes. And so one of our micro apps, leveraging the workspace, facilitates that workflow. So folks can really focus on the IT change versus the approval process to get that done. And that's a springboard, right? That can be custom for any organization with their system of record, their workflows, et cetera. But it's kind of that idea, that springboard to launch into that. And then you had asked Neil about business leaders, right? Yeah. Well, we touched on all of that with regards to productivity and innovation, quality and customer sat. And I will mention too, with all of these employee engagement numbers that we're talking about, that certainly is important for employee retention and talent acquisition, right? And having people join the company. So you had asked a really good question, and thank you for that question. I just wanted to touch on those 2 points because you know what? IT admins and business leaders and those are the people. And I think we got to keep their focus with them.
I completely agree there, Nancy. And I think it's also worth highlighting that it has been a very turbulent 12 months, to say the least. And many businesses are now going to be wanting to come out and hit the ground running and make up for lost ground. But they are also challenged with doing more with less. So the big question, I suppose, I'd love to ask on behalf of every decision maker listening is, what is the ROI of improving employee engagement and well-being?
Thank you for asking that question. And I have to say that I take this one very seriously. So I do have quite some numbers and research results that I have with me almost at all times. I'm ready to talk about this anytime needed because I think it's a very important question. I think it's a critical question. Nancy mentioned some of this, and I know she works with these numbers and with this research basically on everyday basis. So I will mention a couple of specific research studies that uncover this topic and that our customers can refer to. These are all publicly available data and studies. According to Gartner's 2020 Reimagine HR Employee Survey, this is something that they run regularly, employers that support employees with their life experience see a 23% increase in the number of employees reporting better mental health and a 17% increase in the number of employees reporting better physical health. So those are, hard data. There is also a real benefit to employers who see a 21% increase in the number of high performers compared to organizations that don't provide the same degree of support to their employees. So 21%. An interesting insight by Gallup that Nancy also mentioned is or underlines the so-called engagement well-being paradox, showing that remote workers during the pandemic showcased higher engagement, while at the same time being exposed to the unprecedented anti-well-being factors. So there is an important insight for leaders. When managing remote teams during the pandemic, leaders need to capitalize on the advantages of working from home while actively working to reduce sources of exceptional stress and worry. I don't know, I don't have a recipe how to strike that balance and where is it, but I believe that any good employer will know their people and will know how to manage this. I can say proudly that I think Citrix has done fantastically in the past. As an employee of Citrix, I can say that this was an exceptional way in which my employer took care of us. So the bottom line of Gallup research is that leaders who work to proactively prevent and manage burnout while capitalizing on the needed flexibility and efficiency that remote work affords will be building stronger, healthier, and more productive teams looking into the future. And if left untreated, here a threat. Employee burnout has the potential to significantly impact those organizations and the lives of their employees. It's a very simple equation. And to finish with one last number, the World Health Organization estimates that depression and anxiety disorders cost the global economy $1 trillion each year in lost productivity. That's a lot. Not, I can't even say, that's enough for anybody to pay attention at this. This is just a lot. So,
yeah. Well, in that same study from Gallup or that paper, that article, also mentioned, not just the lost potential productivity that is so important that you touched on, Danijela, but also today, burnout is costing just the U.S. employees alone, the U.S. workforce, between 125 and 190 billion annually on their healthcare spend to care for themselves dealing with burnout. Right. So, message, there in big neon sign is let's avoid burnout, shall we? And to your point, Danijela, is, employers should be, right. And hopefully, because it's just the gosh darn right thing to do, right? Instinctively is care for each other. But, for those that maybe don't hear that voice as loudly inside, instinctively, intuitively, the numbers are there, right? The numbers are there. And one other point that I'll add to that, if I may, is that Gallup, we're talking about Gallup, they just do so many great studies on employees and employers and the world of work, right? As do many others. But in April 2021, they surveyed the world of work, and the number one care about for Gen Zs and millennials with their employer, which, by the way, Gen Zs and millennials comprise about 46% of the workforce. So their voice is pretty loud, right? Their number one care about with their employers is that their employer cares about their well-being. That's their number one. So employers, for their workforces to attract talent, to retain talent, and then to have that talent thrive, right, need to be looking at well-being. And the beautiful thing, going back to your earlier question, Neil, about how can technology be the enabler? Well, with Gen Zers and millennials, they're technology natives, right? They've grown up with technology. So technology focused on that well-being, that is, that's right in the crosshairs for, what is that, 46% of the workforce. Right. So, and then, on a positive note, I'm just going to mention this too, because Danijela talked about it. And, when you have employee engagement and well-being, those employees are thriving. And you touched on those high performers, Danijela, but wouldn't it be great if we had a world of work thriving? What kind of world would that be beyond the world of work? That sounds like a beautiful whole world to be a part of. And boy, if we can help with that, I'm in. Right. So anyway, so those are that I think speaks to the relevance of why this stuff really matters beyond the hopefully instinctive, noble purpose. Right.
So refreshing to hear, and backed up by such powerful numbers as well. And I am a solutions, not a problems kind of guy. So I'm going to try and help business leaders and IT admins that may be listening to us today and bring to life what we're talking about. So can you give me a use case or an example that will just bring to life the Citrix Workspace, the micro apps, and how it would all work in an organization and the kind of results that it can deliver?
I can start because I'm so excited to talk about, we have, this is what we already have, we can do, we know how to do this. So we have several use cases available on our Workspace platform, sort of ready to go. I like to think of them as little packages, little presents with a bow tied on the top, and they're very pretty. So those solutions are focused on employees' resources, recognition, well-being, communication in the widest sense. However, the point that that's important for me to make in this regard is that being a platform means that if we are interested in discovery of further use cases that can make a specific impact in a specific organization, this is my invite to the businesses out there to check out I sound like a millennial, don't I, Nancy? To check out our platform. So instead, sharing some ideas that we've already discovered with some of our customer solutions that we've already built. This is all available publicly, can be taken a look at. I would like to invite your listeners, especially those in leadership positions, to engage their internal teams and define use cases leveraging our platform to make this positive impact in their organizations. So there's a lot of material out there on the website. A lot is already available, but I think the possibilities of the platform and an open invite is the message that I would like to send out to this question.
Yeah. And I'll echo on to that. You know, the possibilities are limitless, right? And hopefully business leaders, you know, their minds have been expanded and opened and they recognize that now just from the pace of innovation we talked about earlier, right? The possibilities are limitless and endless. And we're so grateful that Citrix has offered, you know, some of these packages already. And if for some reason, businesses, organizations look at those and there isn't one that's just exactly right. You know, customization is also, you know, is such an important point when you leverage micro apps because, you know, well-being can mean different things to different organizations. I kind of look at it as a spectrum, right? And oftentimes that spectrum is mirroring or reflective of the culture, the corporate culture. So, you know, to some on one end of the spectrum, it might just mean technologically, you know, reminders to physically move, right? Get up, stand, stretch, breathe. Working down the spectrum, some it might be a kudos app, right? We talked about that collaboration and that recognition of each other's contributions. You know, it's kind of nice. I mentioned that two-way trust, street of trust and credibility among employees and employees. Well, it's also among employees, right? We saw so many employees care for each other, not just the organization, but employees, right? So kudos or thank you, gratitude apps among each other are such great shout outs for great work done, right? And by the way, they inspire additional great work. But then also, you know, there's kind of going down that spectrum, as I mentioned, you know, where people are with what well-being means to the organization. Some may say, you know what, I want to check in on your emotional well-being, right? If you're willing to share, how you doing? How you doing? And then based on their responses, again, depending on the organization, there's so much curated content out there, right? Maybe it offers up, pick it, you know, comical memes, right? Or funny memes or something that just, you know, addresses something that brings some levity into their day, right? Or maybe it's a breathing exercise. You know, there's 1 3-minute breathing exercise that's hilarious. It's how not to freak out during moments of frustration. Listen, how many people could use that? It's 3 minutes, right? Or, you know, meditations or affirmations or, you know, there's all sorts of content. And that's why that customization is kind of fun because, you know, it really can reflect foster, perpetuate your culture in such a way. And, that's something that Envision spends a lot of time on with our in-house full-time developers, is really working to customize, these great inspirations, right? Just bring them back to, the organization to get hand in glove type fit. Right. And then evolve it as the organization evolves. Let's remember, I mentioned you can't set it and forget it. Let's continue to evolve it, because what we've seen with, 2020 and beyond is organizations are evolving. And frankly, they need to, right? They need to. That innovation, everything we've talked about, we're all moving, right? And thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's great. Like you said, we are all moving, and it's so important to remember that it is a journey and not a destination. And as we come out of remote working and beginning to embrace hybrid working methods now, do you think the office will become an almost destination place? And how do you see more flexible working and technology making teams more productive and help build a more conscious culture where everyone feels that sense of purpose no matter where they're working? And Danijela, I'll throw that to you first.
This is a very thoughtful question, and I'm very glad that you're asking it. I'm also very much looking forward to hear Nancy, because I've heard her speak about this before, and I have to say that for me, she's a bit of a thought leader, unless, in case it hasn't become obvious to people by now. What I can say is that current zeitgeist, so to say, speaks about the shift from work-life balance to work-life blend. And I think this is what your question also indicates very well. There is a shift happening. Another thing that I like to mention is the digital revolution that I believe and analysts believe is at its infancy now, and is the next big revolution after the industrial one that we're, coming out of, basically. And for sure, we cannot use the paradigm created during the revolution of the past for the shift of the future. The change is happening, and we are yet to witness it. So yes, Neil, I see more flexible working and technology making teams more productive. And while I can't tell you how exactly it will look like, I wish I could, because I'm very curious myself. I can tell you that if you have the platform built in a way that can respond to, whatever the work of tomorrow will be, you're good. And this could be one of my key intrinsic motivators to do what I do. I feel that I'm equipped, I'm ready, I can, whatever comes, we're ready to take it on.
And Danijela, that screams of resilience, and kudos to you and Citrix, right? You as a Citrite and Citrix as an organization. I mean, this is one of the gazillion reasons we partner so closely with Citrix, right? Is everything you just spoke about. So Neil, you talked a little bit more about office space and then culture and purpose, and that gets me excited. But first, let's talk about that office space and will it be a destination space? That's so many executives are reevaluating that right now. I mean, many of my peers, Fortune and PwC, PwC, I think said 87% of execs are reevaluating their office space and likely to shrink it and or add satellite spaces, et cetera. And Fortune, I think, said 75%. And it's funny because Alan Murray, the CEO of Fortune, he thought it was an outlier. So they took, they did additional surveys, and sure enough, 75% was the lowest that came back. So there's no doubt the physical office go forward in this hybrid world of work will change. The idea of a destination space, we actually heard that, from Gensler Tokyo. We were in a session with them and they were really talking, and now we've heard it more and more and more as far as the office being a destination space. And that's where people want to come. And part of, and Danijela, you talked about this, and this is something that's near and dear to our hearts that we've been practicing for, many years here at Envision, is helping to support people in a whole life, right? Not this work life and this personal life, but maybe an integrated whole life. And what you just spoke to, Danijela, really exemplifies that, right? It's speaking of bringing that together. And so one of the things I'll mention real quickly, another app, micro app that we built and it's available on the Citrix Ready marketplace, is to help organizations as they reevaluate their office space and bring people back to the office in, again, that kind of hybrid model. First and foremost, it's tracking people as they come back, asking people to reserve space in the office and when they're coming, and certainly health and safety, right? So how many people will be in the office? How are they feeling? Right. And then also, where are they working? How are they using that office space? Because as leaders reevaluate their office space, let's see how people are really using it. Right. And how do they want to use it go forward? Because those are going to be some key information as they make these really important decisions on real estate go forward. Right. And what works best for their employees. So that's exciting. And again, I keep in mind that all of these apps that are packaged can also serve as inspiration. People have different systems of records. They have different office space. They might have different questions. So customization is always a great possibility or a great additive for that to really maximize the value of that. But then, oh, come on, Neil. You asked about purpose and conscious cultures. You are speaking my language. I get so excited. Listen, purpose. Companies need to provide a sense of purpose, right? Profit alone doesn't cut it anymore. We talked about well-being, and one of the things that folks, when all these studies around well-being and that we need work to do, one of the things that people have done with it is life evaluations, right? During this pandemic, people sat back and started asking themselves some pretty big questions, right? And a lot of that had to be with purpose. And if you think about how much time people spend working, right? If they're doing it for no other purpose than just the shareholders making money, right? I don't know how enthusiastic they'll be. Right. It's really important that companies combine purpose and profit. Right. Listen, profits are important. Those profits fuel innovation. Right. They fuel investment. I'm certainly not suggesting anyone, businesses, not earn profits, but profits and purpose. And yeah, hopefully, as the world of work evolves, that's becoming more prevalent. And then you mentioned too, conscious culture. Ooh, that's good. And in conscious cultures, that's a key. A conscious corporate culture, that's a key to an innovating culture. Really, where it's psychologically safe to bring ideas and not be fear of being judged or making a mistake. Some of those wackadoodle ideas that at least might seem like it at first could be the next best thing. I mentioned psychologically safe. That's Adam Grant and some of his work, organizational psychologist. He's just phenomenal. But I will mention too, conscious leadership really helps cultivate a conscious culture by example. And that's key. And then the last thing I'll mention there around a conscious and innovating culture is collaboration, right? Leadership and collaboration. BCG just released their 2021 report that, really confirms that and talks to that as far as the most innovative companies really having leadership investing in that culture and drive for innovation, as well as the collaboration. Collaborative teams will help drive that innovation. And by the way, almost in many cases, not all, but in many cases, those conscious and innovative cultures are also almost naturally diverse, right? DEI is big in those conscious cultures because, frankly, diverse life experiences, diverse perspectives, those really help fuel innovation. Right. And again, then people building off those together and really taking on empathy for other life experiences that they haven't had and other perspectives they haven't had. That's going to drive innovation for the markets. Right. Because you can really only develop for the markets until you're empathetic to their needs.
You've mentioned stakeholder a few times, and it does feel that stakeholder capitalism has entered the mainstream over the last 12 months or so.
Yes, indeed, it has. It got kind of a mainstream publicity shot in the arm back in 2019 with Larry Fink of BlackRock and his CEO letter where he really highlighted purpose and profit going together. Also that same year, the Business Roundtable issued a statement in kind of discussing their intention of big business to expand their focus beyond the shareholder and really consider all stakeholders within the success model. But, in 2020 is when we saw more action around it. Frankly, as we've alluded to here, Neil, the pandemic seemed to serve as a catalyst of bringing humanity, more humanity, I guess, into business. But Envision's been a conscious business since inception more than 20 years ago. It was really in 2013, though, that we became really intentional about it. We operationalized our business around a framework of 4 tenets, a couple which I've mentioned here today, higher purpose, stakeholder orientation, conscious leadership, and conscious culture. And the really good news is, we're not alone. There's a global movement focused on business being a source for good called conscious capitalism. The movement was co-founded by John Mackey of Whole Foods. And we're really active in the conscious capitalism movement, along with some other great companies like the Motley Fool, the Container Store, Patagonia, and some others. Essentially, we're a group or community of like-valued business leaders dedicated to operating conscious business. And really, using our businesses as a force for good. And you know what? It turns out that business for good is also good business, Neil. Research shows that conscious businesses outperform the S&P 500 14-1 on average. And good to great companies. You remember that great book by Jim Collins, Good to Great? Yeah, conscious businesses outperform good to great companies 6-1. So really, it's kind of goodness all around.
Danijela mentioned a book that profiles Envision. Is that rehumanizing the workplace?
Yes, it is. And thank you. You're kind to ask. The title, I guess, is pretty descriptive as to what it's about, rehumanizing the workplace. But the authors, they profiled Envision as the company that really cares for employees throughout all levels of what they describe as the thriving organization pyramid. They talk about that throughout the book. I guess they were impressed by our comprehensive care for Envisioners and how we work to support them truly in a whole and thriving life rather than, just their work life. So, we're humbled to be talked about in that book. Danijela, what are you most excited about?
For me, there are 2 things that I find exciting today and in my everyday work. Number one is the fact that we're all recognizing something very significant and special is happening. We've been going on about it for the past hour. And even more, the fact that we have the knowledge, experience, and ambition to not only take part in this future, but to shape it. And I think that technology will be seen more and more in the light of how human it is, what does it do for humanity, Nancy, and not as an independent entity. This is where employee experience can become one of the main litmus tests for how good technology is. And being in the center of that as a workspace micro apps product manager makes me not only excited, but also grateful to have an opportunity to build into that, to participate.
Yeah. What excites me about the future of work, and to your question, Neil, how businesses are not just leveraging technology to run their business, but also transform the employee experience. I think we are at such an important and exciting inflection point, right? Businesses recognizing humanity as well as their role in elevating humanity, right? I mentioned earlier the careabouts from Gen Zs and millennials, right? Being that their employer cares for their well-being. The number one care about for Gen Xers and baby boomers is that their organizational leadership is ethical, right? So I talked about conscious leadership, right? Well, isn't that interesting that Gen Xers and baby boomers are looking for that? And I think it's so funny because we talked about earlier this two-way street of trust that's developed. So it's there. In fact, we're not just observing it. Edelman is a great research firm, and every year they put out their trust barometer that looks at the societal institutions, and their 2021 Trust Barometer identified business as the most trusted societal institution. So that's above certainly the government, media, NGOs. Business rose to the top. So when I said earlier that business really stepped up, it stepped up in a really big way. So what I'm really excited about is that I think business, we're going to see it more and more embrace this opportunity to elevate humanity. And I'm excited to be here right now. At Envision, we're walking the talk as a conscious business. And every day we serve that higher purpose by leveraging Citrix platforms to securely enable employee engagement, promote well-being, and empower collaboration across continents. Together, I think Citrix and Envision are consciously building a better world. And I'm so excited to be part of it.
Wow, such a powerful moment to end on there. And we've covered so much in today's conversation, but really we've only just scratched the surface. And I suspect for a lot of people listening, they're going to want to find out more information. They're going to want to contact teams and things. So from a Citrix point of view, Citrix is a big website. Where is the best place to find things about what we've been talking about today?
So customers can read about Citrix solutions for employee well-being and more at citrix.com/solutions under digital workspace. There will be a lot of material, a lot of input and good stuff. Or rather, if you're feeling lucky, just type Citrix and employee well-being into the search bar in Google, and you'll get to see not only the available solutions, our official solutions on the website, but also some inspiration around a few interesting activities and projects that we did, including the Be Well series we did with Washington Post.
Oh, excellent. I'll be checking that out myself. And
it was awesome. Everybody should go check that out. It was incredible. It was great. Mm-hmm.
And what about yourself, Nancy? If anyone wanted to find out more about Envision, the great work you're doing, or even contact yourself or a member of your team, what's the best way of doing that?
Sure. Well, they can go to our website, envisionitllc.com. You can certainly find us on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. We have a monthly coffee break webinar series. So I'd ask folks to, check that out every month. It's the second Thursday of every month. We have our Geek Speak podcast. And of course, there's so many resources on our site.
Well, I genuinely have loved chatting with you both today. I could chat with you for absolutely hours. And in fact, I will continue to listen to your voice, Nancy, on the Geek Speak podcast on my dog walk. You could be the soundtrack to that. But I'd love to stay in touch with you both, get you both back on later in the year or something and find out how that journey's going, because it is a journey, not a destination. But more than anything, just thank you for sitting down and talking with me today.
Neil, thank you. This has been so much fun.
Thanks for the invite and thanks for the opportunity.
Wow, what a great conversation. And so much of what we talked about today has really got me thinking of different ways that technology can make lives easier, not just for businesses, but for employees too. I always say technology works best when it brings people together. So I'd love to hear more about how you are creating a culture of well-being with technology, your experiences, things that have worked, things that haven't worked, and what makes you hopeful about the future. Please share your stories with @techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. If you need any help with any ghostwritten thought leadership content, or you just need help launching your own podcast, you can work with me. Other than that, send me a quick DM on social as well, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, just @NeilC.Hughes. But don't just hit that follow button. Say you listen to the show. It'd be great to actually connect with you. But that's it for today's episode. I'll be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll do it all again. But a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.